I would like just to introduce Senator Morrell and hand him over the microphone.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. It's great to be here. Matter of fact, let me reword this. It's great to be out of Sacramento and in a room full of people who are normal, so thank you, guys. Amen to that. Hey, a couple of things I just want to share. When I'm in Sacramento, I take these things very serious. One of the reasons I ran for office, there's a verse in Proverbs, and it says that a father's duty is to leave an inheritance to his children's children, and I believe that's financial, but goes beyond that, religious freedom and those types of things. And so, you know, my whole life I tried to keep that in mind as I worked. I opened 2 businesses to try to provide a good lifestyle for my family and Christian school and that whole thing. And so then eventually I thought, if you remember Dietrich Bonhoeffer, do you guys remember him? Believe that a person of faith his purpose in life should be where the flames are the hottest. So where is it the hottest? I thought politics. So eventually when the youngest was out of the house, I ran for politics. But it has been very hard for me. Sometimes I leave Sacramento and I feel like I have to detox, you know. And I'm serious about that. I come out of there very depressed. But this morning I was telling Joni, I said, I told her that exact same thing, that, you know, there's days I just hate being there. But last night we had dinner and played bocce ball with your board of directors. And last night I was sitting there thinking I'm the luckiest man in the world. I love my job. So thank you for that. I don't have all the answers, you know. You would think those 7 years I spent in high school I would, but I certainly have some strong opinions, ladies and gentlemen, okay? And I'm going to share those things with you today. One of the things I think we all heard of is there's 2 things we shouldn't talk about, religion and politics. Have you not heard that? But yet a casual review of history has clearly proven that those are the only 2 ways that either send men into 1,000 years of bondage or set them free. Those are the 2 most important things I believe that talks about, especially in light of how our country was founded, right? Faith and reason. George Washington was asked, why is America the greatest country on earth? I understand he used to wear a red hat too that said, make America great. But anyway, but he said because it's the first time the best of Jerusalem intersected Athens, meaning faith and reason. So anyway, those 2 things are what we're going to talk about today. And I have been asked, you know, is there hope for California? That's been the #1 question, guys, I've gotten in the last 2 years. I wasn't in politics until I got to the state legislature. And so I've been there a little bit past 7 years now. And people just started asking me that question in the last couple of years, kind of out of desperation, but also we love our state, right? Greatest weather, a lot of opportunity. You got Lake Tahoe down the street. You've got $47 billion a year in agriculture revenue, and all sorts of things that's made it a wonderful state. But unfortunately, there's been some tough people, and so I do believe there's hope. I have to say there will be challenges, and we need to rise to that occasion. And the second thing is, I think my first 5 years in the legislature, I did doubt whether there was hope for California. But I'm going to share with you a little bit later what I believe are some key leading indicators within some empirical data that I think you'll like, that would hopefully lead you to believe that God hasn't written California off, and that I believe he wants his state back, ladies and gentlemen. So when I first walked into the Capitol, and a newbie, my first night up there after reception, I'm walking outside and I see that big dome all lit up. Isn't it? It's beautiful. It's awe-inspiring, right? And then guess what? I had my own key card to get in there. You know, I really felt pretty prideful and pretty proud and everything. And as I walked in there, I was the only guy in the hallways. That's better. And those walls just gleam, right? And the floors are made of marble. They're shiny. So it's a pretty impressive, awe-inspiring place. Until you get to know some of my friends across the aisle. That sort of taints a lot of things, right? But anyway, I want to share with you so you can walk in my shoes for a day, sort of how I view Sacramento. Now, not everybody, I believe, is this way, but much of it is, because it's a very dangerous place. And I found a section of C.S. Lewis's book, The Screw Tape Letters. Do you remember that? And so Screw Tape, for those of you, it's a fictional account, but nevertheless, it's how Screw Tape and his little minion of demons want to destroy people's lives and nations. And so I thought, man, this really sort of, I think, describes much of what goes on in Sacramento. So we'll set the tone so you can walk in my shoes or see things from my perspective. He says this: I live in the managerial age, in the world of administration. The greatest evil is not now done in those sordid dens of crime that Dickens loved to paint. It is not even done in those concentration camps or labor camps. In those, we see its final results. But it is conceived, ordered, moved, seconded, carried, and minuted in clean, carpeted, warm-lit offices with quiet men with white collars and smooth-shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voice. Hence, naturally enough, my symbol for hell is something like that of the bureaucracy of a police state, ladies and gentlemen. That expresses how I feel many of the days I go in there, because it's a very serious place, and they're doing a lot of damage to our country. And when you tally the score over the last 40 years, which we should be doing, and we, the people, it's not up to the politicians to move the ball. The founders said it was you guys to move the ball. We can no longer afford to be silent. Our silent gives them the green light, you know. And not only that, there's nobody holding up a stop sign that says stop doing this. But when we do speak out, trust me, they will stop. And the reason why? Because Ronald Reagan said so. He said if you can't make the politicians see the light, you can certainly make them feel the heat. So, but here's another thing I want to express to you guys. Don't let them call themselves progressive, because that's a pretty cool word. We want to progress in science and technology, but we don't want to progress in government, because that means the expansion of the bureaucratic state, which that's really a key word for socialism. By the way, have you noticed the last couple of months, they're coming out of the closet proud to call themselves socialists. Socialism has never worked, that's 100% true, but it leads to despotism, then eventually despotism by force. So we're in a very serious position here in California. And what I've noticed, and I will say this, not all my friends across the aisle, but many of them, as I studied where they went to college and the groups they belong to and the things they stay on the floor, I am convinced they have embraced the political ideologies of Marx and Lenin over those of Washington and Lincoln. So please be aware. And look what they've done to ruin this fine state, ladies and gentlemen. You know, the highest taxes, we've got SB1. A lot of people say, you know, our gas is going up 21 cents a gallon, but what many don't realize, the Hoover Institute, I believe, did a study, and they said, you know those 18-wheelers, the truckers, they truck in 78% of our goods and services, foods and groceries and everything else. Those guys are going to get hit the hardest, and they're going to pass that on, the cost, to us. And Hoover Institute predicts that'll be an additional $2,400 per family. So we want to make sure we dislike the Democrats even more because of that, okay? But anyway, it's one of the reasons the top 500 CEOs, again, after 13 years, have said California is the best place to live, but the worst place to do business, ladies and gentlemen. And those are experts, so we've got to turn that around. Ever since we gave up local control, what the founders said, further government moves away from the people, the less inefficient it becomes and ineffective. When we had local control back in the 50s and 60s, California was #1, and America was #1 in the world. Today, when we have bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., telling us how to live our lives rather than the local parents and school boards, now we're 44th in America and like number 18th around the world. So we have to restore those political precepts of limiting government's power and restoring them back to the rightful place. And that has to be the people, ladies and gentlemen. Third thing is, this is sad. 34% of the nation's welfare is here. I had a realtor call and tell me, well, after I gave this speech, he said, that's true. I have a lady who called on one of my rentals. She wants to move from Colorado here because there's more benefits here. And so here's the thing. Guys, that's bad for the soul. You know, it isn't just whatever. You've got 3 and 4 generations of people. Man, women, in-betweeners. We were made to work, ladies and gentlemen, right? So anyway, and then this year was devastating for Police with bail reform, which means no bail reform. AB 106, as you know, has released over 60,000 criminals, making our streets and placing our families in harm's way. So we've got a lot of work to do. It's in our hands. But the good people, and I'm talking about me too, my good friends, my Republican friends in the Senate, I love these guys. They're great guys, but they don't always play offense like we should. There's nothing wrong with playing hardball. They do it to us. They still cheat and do everything else. We just have to speak out, and we have to have our facts straight and be straightforward. But here's the thing I want to talk about even more. I was in business. I had a lending company, and I had a real estate company. And I thought I was the boss, but after 20 years, I found out that Joni was really the one pulling my strings, right? So anyway, but here's one thing I've learned in history. Money's good, right? What was that movie, Show Me the Money? But you know what? All of history, as we stand on those shoulders of those heroes who certainly possess a superior wisdom than Mike Morrell, whether it be Washington or Lincoln or Adams or Thomas Aquinas, Augustine, or Moses himself, it all comes down to this, ladies and gentlemen. What makes a nation prosperous is based on that of all the habits and dispositions which lead to political prosperity, morality and religion are indispensable supports. And so that's the bottom line. You know, when Reagan tried to end communism, Nixon thought he was a little foolish because Nixon believed the Soviets, the communists, it was a financial problem. Reagan believed it was a spiritual problem. And so he defeated him by using that kind of language. So anyway, some of these bills are just really bad and destructive to our families and our state as well as our nation. And like I'm just going to read a couple of them. We already talked about AB 2943. That's an end run. We have some churches, pastors, and some Christian colleges that want to help Evan Lowe redraft that bill next year. Then we've got other college presidents and pastors that are trying to stop those pastors from helping Evan Lowe. So it's really going to be interesting because he's going to bring that bill back next year bigger and better than ever. And my personal belief, I could be wrong, but I believe Governor Brown may have been thinking about vetoing that bill, and perhaps that's why he pulled it, but I've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He may have done it from his good intentions. But AB 329 I want to share with you because there's many bills like this, but I'm just going to give you a flavor. This is bad. This is a state of depravity to its lowest. If you remember in Dante's Inferno, there's 7 layers of hell. Whoever wrote these bills and voted on it is probably nearing that 7th layer of hell. But it was AB 329, the new sex curriculum, K through 12. And I'm not going to share, I'm only going to share one aspect of that bill. You can hear me still? Okay. One aspect of that bill I'm going to share, and my pastor was going to put pictures of the curriculum up on a screen at church, and so I says, no, you're not going to do that. And because it's just inappropriate. He said, well, wait a minute, they're teaching us K through 12. She says, this is not appropriate for adults. You do this and you're going to be in trouble with me. So he didn't. But anyway, there was a section on there, and I saw it with my own eyes, on abstinence. But they assume our young people do not have the discipline or the restraint to abstain. So what they've come up with is pictures of toys that they can buy to stimulate themselves. And so, but it gets worse, and I'm even embarrassed to, it gets worse, and I'm even embarrassed to say this. From my understanding, and this was through Church United, about 200 pastors who have been researching this, said that if you don't have the money to buy those toys, here's things you can find in your refrigerator, ladies and gentlemen. And so that is, California is it as a, yeah. Yeah, a few people are saying they read that too. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a battle for the soul. You know, I'm convinced I'm convinced of a lot of things, but on this thing of California, many of our friends, my friends, have left. Some are leaving. Do you guys have any people that have said they're going to leave or they want to leave? They're complaining about California. Let me tell you something. We send the best of our technology across America and across the world. We send the best of our agriculture across America and across the world. We also send the worst of our filth across this United States, you see. And so it's said as California goes, so goes the nation, ladies and gentlemen. Those of our friends who think they're going to escape, it's going to follow them. And Colorado, it used to be a red state. Now it's a purple state. And the reason they blame that is because people from California moved there, right? And our daughter lives in Arizona. There was an op-ed in the paper the other day, and they were asking Californians not to move to Arizona and mess up their state. So go figure. So same thing with Texas, yeah. But anyway, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. We can't move. And if you're still here for whatever reason, perhaps we're here for a purpose, ladies and gentlemen. And because, what's that? Oh, but anyway, I do believe America is the battleground for the soul of America. And so we've got to fight, and we have to, again, restore those things that we know are right and moral, ladies and gentlemen. And we have to be a voice to good people. We don't always speak out, but we've got to speak out. And trust me, they'll go back to where their closets and whatever else. So anyway, so earlier I said, is there hope for California? Let me give you 3 key leading indicators that I've seen. There's more than that, but just in the last couple of years, things that I've seen. But first, I want you to consider the life of Sir Winston Churchill. I like that tubby little man. You know, he had great odds against Germany, right? FDR did not want to sell him destroyers, fearing they would lose the war and fall into the hands of the Nazis. So we were reluctant to go in and help him. So they were really hurting before America got involved. And in fact, they were being bombed by the Nazis, Great Britain was, London, for 57 consecutive nights in a row. Do you remember that? It was called the Blitz. So the whole skies of London was lit up with fire. Can you imagine that? That's not happened here, ladies and gentlemen. So I think we're in a lot of trouble from within. Lincoln said that no country will ever be able to take a drink from the Ohio. He said, but if we die, it'll be by suicide. So I'm not worried about outside forces. I'm worried about the inside forces. But Churchill, against those great odds, gives me a great hope and confidence. And here's what he says during those dark times of Great Britain. He says, when great causes are on the move in the world, stirring all men's souls, drawing them from their firesides, casting aside comfort, wealth, and a pursuit of happiness in response to impulses at once awe-striking and irresistible, we learn that we are spirits, not animals, and that something is going on in space and beyond space and time, which, whether we not like it or not, spells duty. Ladies and gentlemen, things are on the move, and we don't know what Providence is doing right now. Just as he didn't know if Providence was going to bail them out of trouble, but that happened, and so we have to depend on that. We have to do our duty, ladies and gentlemen. And again, that's why you're here today, and I thank you for coming here and talking about serious things. And we have a duty to save our country, not just for us, but for our kids. And now most of us here probably have grandkids, and they need to have the same. It's our duty and our responsibility to give them the same opportunities as that we had. And so there. So anyway, here's 3 key leading indicators. The first, the dams have overreached. Did you hear there's been polling that a lot of the Democratic voters, they're afraid of what these guys in Sacramento are doing. But the thing is, they're not coming to Republicans because we don't make the argument. And that's our fault, my friends. Sometimes we're too nice, but we got to toughen them up a little bit, guys. And we will do that. But also, did you read the LA Times? The liberal LA Times. The left-leaning Marxist LA Times endorsed John Cox. Yeah, so, yeah. I can't imagine that over Gavin Newsom. He's such a pretty boy, right? But anyway, so Winston Churchill talked about this. They had politically correct speech in his day. It was not called that. This has been around for millenniums. It's an old trick. The Bolsheviks did it against the Tsar to separate people and turn them against one another. It's the same lie, the same deception. But what Churchill said is, how you know they're about ready to lose is when they're reduced to accusing and blaming, blaming and accusing. And ladies and gentlemen, what do we hear on our news? Do we hear debate, or do we just hear them making things up and a blaming, blaming, blaming? You know? Second thing is, Churchill says that makes them weak. But the thing that I like the best, Churchill mentioned to one of his military aides that they were going to be able to defeat Hitler because Hitler was afraid of Great Britain. And his admiral, I believe it was, asked, how can he be afraid when they outman us, more artillery, more ships, and more weapons? And he says, because Hitler is afraid of our words. You see, ladies and gentlemen, so are my friends across the aisle. They want to shut us down. They want to shut you down, you know, or say you're not tolerant or whatever. You know what I mean? We cannot be silent because California is at stake, so is America. This is the time to exercise our civic responsibility in a vigorous way, more than we've ever done before. But that's the number one sign. They've lost the debate. Number two, and my wife thinks this is perhaps the most important thing I do, besides putting out the trash at home and those sort of things. But you know, when I got up to the Senate, the average senator hires 3 to 5 interns per year. Well, I was reading that the senator next door to me had 3 times the staff I did because, you know, they control the purse strings. So I thought, that's unfair. So I went out and hired like 45 of them, right? And so every year, you know, that's just stuck. So we work them hard, we train them well, and but I felt like we needed to give something back to them. So we develop a syllabus. We have we have them watch a video on Constitution 101 through Hillsdale College, if any of you guys like Hillsdale. We have some selective writings of the Federalist Papers in there. We introduce them to Plutarch and then Ethics by Aristotle. And a couple of things I'd like to just share with you. These young students come to us, almost all of them are political science majors, and said, wow, that was really good. I've never heard these things before. Wait. Well, not only high school, but remember, these are state, most of them are state college and universities. They're still not even teaching it there to political science majors. And so the thing that I've come away with in a breath of fresh air, some of these young people come in all different types and shapes, you know, and stripes and different political party. But when they leave there, I get this sense the serious ones ask some very serious questions. And I think where they're different than my generation, many of them are truth seekers, you know. And if we're not out there making a compelling case, they're going to believe Bernie Sanders, right? But even think about Bernie Sanders, you know. He is saying the same thing I just said. You young people we're not leaving you an economic opportunity. So they're buying into that. The only difference is Bernie says government and socialism need to solve the problem, but us Republicans say, no, it has to be limited government, ladies and gentlemen. So I believe those millennials are in our court, but we've got to make the case to them. So that's number 2. Number 3, Alexis de Tocqueville. Remember him? He wrote the book, Democracy in America. It's about a 700-page book. He came, the French philosopher, French government wanted him to come over to America. How could these moderately educated people become the most powerful military and prosperous nation in all of human history so quick? So he traveled what was then every corner of America, and he points out thousands of things that Americans do different than others. But he states that we have these 2 vast oceans which separates us from our natural enemies, which protects us. We have great natural resources, great minerals, all sorts of wonderful things we have. But he said, I discovered their greatness and their foundations of success when I walked into the church and saw that the pulpits were aflame with righteousness. And then he made this quote, I think you've all heard it. He says, America's great because America's good. And when America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. And so here's the point. For the last 50 or 60 years, many of these, let me go back. Back then, 27 of the signers on the Declaration of Independence were either in the ministry or studied for it. And to be in the ministry back then, to be a real man, you had to be able to write and read in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. So, I mean, they were scholarly folks, right? And so anyway, but today, the last 50 or 60 years, many of the pulpits have gone missing in action on the issues you and I care about. We want to stand for life, and they're silent, right? We want to stand for traditional marriage, but they're silent. And so this is wrong. I call them user-friendly, seeker-sensitive, and you guys need to push your pastor in a very polite way to do it, because you don't want to rock the boat, but you want to keep asking them the tough questions. But here's something that's just happened fairly recently, ladies and gentlemen. I had a pastor come in my office, and he said, you know, do you need another pastor up here? And I said, well, maybe and maybe not. I said, here's the kind of pastor we need, a man who's going to come in here and hold those guys accountable. We don't need any user-friendly folks, right? So he said, if I bring 50 best pastors up here, would you tell them exactly what you told me? So he brought them up. Then they want to know how to get involved. And then others came up. And then I was asked to speak to a group of pastors having a conference in Long Beach, D.C., here, there, and everywhere. And I think I've passed the 700 mark of pastors that I've spoken to, and they, you know what they want to know? How do we take back our state? And this year, 2943 scared the heck out of them, you know? And so they really want to engage, but we got to keep that going. You want to tell your pastor that there's now over 700 pastors that are stepping up, you know, because they want to be in on the movement, right? And so this is a good thing, because again, this has just been a real blessing to me, because when I sat down with some of them last year, I said, let's do an action alert and try to, the first thing, you know, we want to help people get elected, but let's try to stop some of these bad bills. You got to make the case, right? And I showed them how to organize and how to contact their legislators, not other legislators. So I did an action alert that she's going to pass out in a second here if you want to sign up for it. I'm not going to hit you up for money or anything. But what the action alert is they'd ask me, how many bills did us Republicans stop last year? And I said, well, on bills on morality, I said, well, actually, over the last 4 years, we've stopped 0 bills. And so they said, why don't we start with 3 bills we try to stop? I will have you know, ladies and gentlemen, we stopped 4 bills this year, and there's another one the governor's considering vetoing. If that goes through, that'll be 5, and our goal was 3. So again, yeah. So we've got people, you know, we're trying to organize this. Now I'm asking, you know, if you'll sign up on that action alert, just sign clear. Not going to use it, not going to give anything away. It's just strictly let you know what bills the pastors want to focus on, which are the ones you guys want to focus on. And then, you know, next year we're going to go for more. Then after that, we're going to go for more. And there's also a program we're working on to start training. It's another group other than what I've been doing on training people, ordinary folks, to get involved at the school board levels, the planning commissions, and eventually state senate on there. And so there's much work to do, ladies and gentlemen, but I believe we are going to take back our state. And again, we can win, but we have to stop them by speaking out and being concise. I'd be happy to take a question a second here.
In a second.
Oh.
In a second.
Okay, thanks. I'm almost done here. Don't fall asleep on me yet. Hey, don't forget a couple of things, too, on the political principles of limited government. Remember, the Constitution only has 18 enumerated powers, meaning there's only certain things they can do. And stealing our money for dams when they don't build dams is one of those things that shouldn't be there, right? So don't vote on any more dam bonds. So there. But remember, the Declaration of Independence says to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's the first time that was placed in a political document, meaning we no longer have to bow a knee to a tyrant, but we have the ability to elect our own leaders. We have to get better at upgrading those people we send to represent our interests. Second, free speech, freedom of religion. If you did have religion back a couple of 100 years ago, and you lived in countries like Germany, you were required to adopt the faith of the king. So if Germany would have been a Lutheran, I guess. So anyway, America, what a great place. Even property rights the first time. So these are things that we have to defend for freedom. And that's why America has been so prosperous, is because of those political principles of limiting government's power. And also, we as Republicans have to remind those people who are elected, as well as even those darn people at the DMVs, that they work for us, right? We have to remind them. They think they're masters of the universe. Anytime you're in there, you remind them they're public servants. Even if they say go to the back of the line and take another number, just remind them, okay? Because government's there to be our servant and not our masters, and we the people have to remind them of that, folks. And another thing, too, it's their job to rank the citizen above the state. Right now, there's been floor speeches. I remember Mark Leno, I had a bill, and it was about giving more control to parents for elementary schools and thing. And he got up there and said, fellow members, can you imagine if we let parents make that decision? So, ladies and gentlemen, that's how they think about us in California. That's how they think about you in Washington, D.C., that we're not capable of making those decisions. We've got to turn that around, ladies and gentlemen, because I've seen some of these guys and the decisions they make, and I'm not impressed, and certainly I know you're not, or you wouldn't be here. So let me just close with one last thought, and I'll call it our call to duty, and just some words again from Winston Churchill that I hope will inspire us to go out of here today and as long-term planning and a strategy to just really work hard and realize we've been given an opportunity. We have a purpose in life right here to be here today and to take back our state. So I'll close with this, and then I'd be happy to take some easy questions. So Churchill says this, our future and that of many generations is at stake. We are sure that the character of human society will be shaped by the resolves we take and the deeds we do. We need not bewail the fact that we have been called upon to face such solemn responsibilities. We may be proud and even rejoice amidst our tribulations that we have been born at this cardinal time for so great an age and so splendid an opportunity of service here below. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing me a few minutes here today.
Okay, the senator has offered to answer a few questions, and these are questions, not statements, okay? And Senator, if you will repeat the question so that we know what you're answering. Okay.
You got it. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay. Did you hear him back there? He said, I'm the smartest guy he's ever heard speak. So thank you for that, sir. He talked about Prop 13. My friends across the aisle have hated that because they claim it takes money away from education. Let me just share a couple of things about education. I've heard California gets less money than anybody else. The reality of it, we're pushing about 16 grand. But picture big government, a bureaucratic pipeline up in Sacramento. So they take all that money with administrative salaries, people are making a ton of dough, and then it goes back to the county and they make a ton of dough. Then it goes in my town, Rancho Cucamonga, not one but 5 school districts, 5 superintendents, and then it gets into the classroom and little Billy gets $5 a year for education. So we got to cut the middleman out. That's what it means to limit government's power, and we got to make sure that money gets back into the classroom rather than in the hands of the bus drivers. Thank you. And so my friends, the Democrats, claim the reason education's been beat up so bad isn't because of Prop 13. We like that 1% to 1.25%, right? And they're not going to raise it. But here's the thing. Look at, the other 2 states that really matter, New Jersey and New York, they want to go that way. Do you know, I get them confused. One's 3%, the other's 4%. And it isn't just when you buy the property. They keep reassessing, from my understanding. So can you imagine New Jersey if they get it up to 4%, and you got a $600,000 home and your taxes go to whatever that is, $24,000. And so every now and then I have people say, hey, Morrell, you need to compromise more and reach across the aisle. And I'll say, you know what, you're right. Let's talk about taxes. On your taxes, what are you at, 1% right now? Dems want to go to 4%. Do you want me to stick you at 2.5 or 3? And then suddenly they say, no, on second thought, don't compromise with those guys. So anyway, the problem is they want to keep raising taxes, but now they're going to go through the back door instead of going for the whole thing at once. They're going to start picking on commercial billings because that way, the public generally will not care about that. But what that'll do, that'll take them and our businesses and raise their rents, which they'll have to pass the cost on to us, and it'll be the same thing with landlords and that kind of thing. So it's wrong. And by the way, one thing that we have to do to clearly communicate to anybody under 50, you can't say Prop 13. They have no idea what it is, so you got to explain the whole thing to them. That's been polling done. So we've got to stop that. I think you were number 2, sir.
Yeah, all right. Speaking of taxes, what's your position on yes on 6?
That's the SB1.
No, yes on 6. Yeah,
SB1, gas tax. Well, my position, of course, was I voted against that gas tax, and it's been a great thing to beat my friends up on across the aisle, and so we should vote yes on it because that would get rid of the gas tax. But that's just one of many problems, sir. We've got a lot more. Young lady in the blonde hair.
Thank you for young.
Young lady.
Okay. I am on a very discouraging search right now for a church.
Uh-huh.
And while it's okay if they don't want to get political, I want them to teach the Bible. And and I want them not to avoid it so as not to be political. Now, is there a way that we can get the list of 700 clergy that you talked about?
Well, I'm working on that. I'll give me it before you leave. Give me. I'll look on that. You know, that's kind of hard. A couple of things. One thing I've learned, just my own personal thing. You kind of got to learn more on your own these days than anything else. Another thing too, pushing your pastor is good, but there's a verse said that 7 things God hates, and one is a brother who causes ascension. So you have to be really sly about it and polite. But I just keep the pressure on. And one of the things too I've been doing is I told my last pastor about these 700 pastors, and he was a guy that doesn't want to get involved, but when he hears that 700 pastors are engaged, you know, I can tell he's wondering if he's missing out on the fun and going to miss the train. So we just want to keep working these guys because they really are key. And here's why. They got the ability to, the church I go to, you know, there must be 12,000 people there, and he has live streaming, 2 million people watch it, and a radio program with a couple of million people. So some of these guys have a tremendous amount of influence, and they can really, but you got to, you know, just keep it up and remind them, hey, a moral issue and a political issue, there's no difference. That's right. You know, is murder political or moral? It's both, right? Is the question on life political or moral? It's both. So,
The Bible, don't avoid it.
yeah. Any man that thinks that they can discern what should be left out is kind of amazing. We want to avoid those. I think you were next then. Well, there's a couple of things. Let me go back. You know, the challenge with Americans is we want things now. Tocqueville even said that, right? But you know, most people never plan to fail, but fail to plan. You know, in 1928, I think it was, the Ottoman Empire was they died. So the next year, the Brotherhood of Muslims was formed, and they did a 200-year plan how to conquer the world, right? And so we need to have maybe not a 200-year plan, but we need to think in terms of long-term strategies. And so I'm not sure how this election is going to go, but I believe in the next few elections things are going to turn our way. So we don't want to put all our hopes in this one election. But you know, it is kind of interesting. The last poll, he was only 4 points behind. And another thing too, do you guys know who Pastor Jack Hibbs is of Calvary Chapel? Yeah, that's one we go to. And so he's been traveling with that guy. He's been going to Hispanic churches in L.A. and speaking, hey, you pastors need to vote for this guy. I've never seen pastors in California engaged like that. And so I am cautiously guarded, optimistic. If I was an odds better, man, I wouldn't know. I might say John Cox is 1 or 2 points within reach, but we still have 40 plus days to go. That's an eternity for that. Okay. Well, lastly, again, thank you for allowing me to say a few words. And second of all, I hope you'll sign up on that action alert and then give that to Rebecca. And then Joni and I are going to have to leave here because The good news is there's something, we're from Southern California, and as Churchill says, things are on the move. I've got 2 other speeches to give today, and it was just, it was almost like, I do, and she's got a card for me. So anyway, you'll get it. You got it. So ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.